It was just another day at the diner on the outskirts of Chicago, the kind of place where people stopped for breakfast before heading off to work, or grabbed a quick bite during their lunch break. It wasn't fancy, just a small, family-owned spot with red vinyl booths, chrome-trimmed counters, and a black and white checkered floor that gave it a retro charm. The sign outside read Maggie's Diner, though most locals simply called it the diner. Amanda moved quickly between the tables, balancing plates and refilling coffee cups. She was in her late 20s, with long brown hair tied back, in a neat ponytail. Her uniform, a crisp white blouse tucked into black pants topped with a black apron, was practical and clean, even after hours of serving hungry customers. Despite the chaos of the lunch rush, she always managed to keep a smile on her face. People liked Amanda because she was friendly without being overbearing. She remembered regulars' orders and greeted newcomers warmly, making everyone feel welcome. Today had been busier than usual. Trucks were parked outside, their drivers taking a break from long hauls along the highway. Office workers sat huddled together, discussing deadlines over burgers and fries. Even a few families had squeezed into the booths, kids giggling as they spun sugar packets across the table. Amanda didn't mind the extra effort. In fact, she preferred it. When things got slow, her thoughts tended to wander, to memories she'd rather leave buried. As the lunch crowd began to thin out, Amanda started clearing empty plates and wiping down tables. That's when she noticed him. He walked in quietly, almost unnoticed amidst the clatter of dishes and chatter of voices. He was tall, with sharp features and dark hair streaked with gray at the temples. His suit looked expensive, tailored perfectly to fit his broad shoulders, and his polished leather shoes clicked softly against the tiled floor. He didn't belong here, not in this little diner filled with truckers and office clerks. But there, he was standing by the counter, scanning the room with an unreadable expression. "Can I help you?" Amanda asked, approaching him with her usual politeness. Up close, she could see fine lines around his eyes and mouth, evidence of years spent, worrying about things far beyond the scope of everyday life. Yet there was something else in his gaze, something intense, almost calculating. "I'll take a cup of coffee," he said, his voice smooth and steady. "And a slice of cherry pie, if you have it." "We do," Amanda replied with a nod. "Anything else?" He shook his head slightly, his attention already drifting away from her. "That will be all." She led him to a booth near the window, away from the lingering noise of the kitchen. As she placed the menu in front of him, she couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching her, not rudely but with a kind of detached curiosity. Most customers barely glanced at her beyond placing their order, but this man seemed different. There was no impatience in his demeanor, no sense of entitlement. Instead, he carried himself with quiet confidence, as if he were used to observing the world from a distance. When Amanda returned with his coffee and pie, she found him staring out the window, lost in thought. For a moment, she hesitated, unsure whether to interrupt. Then she cleared her throat softly. "Here you go," she said, setting the plate and cup on the table. Steam curled lazily from the surface of the coffee, mingling with the faint aroma of cherries and buttery crust. "Thank you," he murmured, turning his attention back to her. His eyes flicked downward, catching sight of something around her neck. Amanda instinctively reached up to touch the delicate silver necklace she always wore. It was a gift from her grandmother, passed down to her after her passing. The pendant was shaped like a starburst, its intricate design gleaming faintly in the light. For a split second, the man froze. His hand, poised halfway to lifting his coffee cup, hovered in midair. His expression shifted ever so slightly, just enough for Amanda to notice. Confusion? Recognition? She couldn't tell. Whatever it was, it vanished almost instantly, replaced by the same calm mask he'd worn since walking. "Is everything okay?" Amanda asked, tilting her head slightly. He blinked, snapping out of whatever trance he'd fallen into. "Yes," he said, his tone clipped but polite. "Everything is fine." Amanda nodded slowly, still sensing that something was off, but she didn't press further. Servers learned early on not to pry too deeply into customers' lives. If someone wanted to talk, they would. Otherwise, it was best to let them be. The man ate his pie in silence, occasionally sipping his coffee. Amanda kept an eye on him from across the room, refilling drinks and clearing tables as needed. Every now and then she caught him glancing at her, or more specifically at the necklace. Each time he looked away quickly as if trying to hide his interest. It made her uneasy, though she couldn't say why. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the man pushed his plate aside and stood up. He pulled a wallet from his jacket pocket and dropped several bills onto the table, far more than the cost of his meal. Amanda approached cautiously, counting the money in her head. $150? A ridiculous amount for a cup of coffee and a slice of pie. "Sir," she began, holding out the cash. "This is way too much." He waved her off dismissively. "Keep it," he said, his voice firm. Then, after a brief pause, he added, "Take care of yourself, Amanda." Her name rolled off his tongue effortlessly, as if he'd known it all along. Amanda frowned, taken aback. "How did you know my name?" But he didn't answer. Instead, he turned and headed toward the door, his footsteps echoing softly against the floor. Just before stepping outside, he glanced back one last time. His eyes locked onto the necklace once again, and for a fleeting moment, Amanda thought she saw fear flicker across his face. Then he was gone, leaving her standing there with unanswered questions swirling in her mind. Later that evening, Amanda returned to her modest apartment after finishing her shift at the diner. It wasn't much, a one-bedroom space with plain walls and second-hand furniture, but it was hers. She liked the simplicity of it, the way everything had its place. After locking the door behind her, she kicked off her shoes, poured herself a glass of water, and sat down on the edge of her bed. Her thoughts kept drifting back to the man in the diner, the expensive suit, the oversized tip, the strange look he'd given her when he noticed her necklace. What had unsettled him so much? And how had he known her name without asking? She reached up instinctively to touch the pendant, hanging around her neck. It was cool against her skin, its smooth surface catching the light from the bedside lamp. Amanda had worn it every day since her grandmother passed away 5 years ago. It was more than just jewelry. It was a connection to the past, a tangible reminder of the woman who had raised her after her parents died in a car accident. Margaret had always been mysterious about the necklace, though. Whenever Amanda asked where it came from or why it was so important, her grandmother would smile softly and say, "It's special, sweetheart. Someday you'll understand." At the time, Amanda had brushed it off as one of her grandmother's quirks. Now, sitting alone in her quiet apartment, she found herself wondering if there was more to the story. For the first time, she took the necklace off and held it up to examine it closely. The starburst design was intricate, almost too perfect, to have been crafted by hand. Tiny grooves radiated outward from the center like beams of light frozen in time. There was something otherworldly about it, though Amanda couldn't put her finger on exactly what. Was it the way it seemed to shimmer even in low light? Or was it the weight of it, lighter than it should have been? As she studied the pendant, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Startled, she set the necklace aside and picked up the device. It was a text from Lisa, her co-worker at the diner. "Hey, did that guy leave you some crazy tip today?" Amanda sighed and typed back, "Yeah." Harifty's still trying to figure out why. Lisa replied almost instantly, "Weird. Maybe he's got a thing for waitresses?" Amanda chuckled softly but didn't respond. She doubted romance had anything to do with it. There was something else going on here, something bigger than a generous customer leaving an extravagant tip. Meanwhile, across town, Richard sat in his penthouse office overlooking downtown Chicago. The skyline glittered beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, but he barely noticed. His mind was consumed by thoughts of Amanda and the necklace. He hadn't been able to stop thinking about it since leaving the diner. He opened a secure laptop and began typing commands into a program most people didn't even know existed. Within minutes, classified files filled the screen. Documents, photographs, and reports related to Project Starfire. Richard scrolled through them quickly, searching for any mention of the starburst pendant. When he finally found what he was looking for, his heart skipped a beat. There it was, a grainy black and white photograph taken decades ago. In it, a young woman stood in a sterile laboratory surrounded by scientists in lab coats. She held several metallic objects similar to Amanda's necklace, each glowing faintly despite the poor quality of the image. The caption beneath the photo identified the woman as Margaret Hayes, Amanda's grandmother. Richard leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. How could this be possible? Project Starfire had been shut down over 50 years ago, its artifacts scattered or destroyed. Yet here was Amanda, unknowingly carrying one of the most dangerous relics from that era around her neck. The implications were staggering. If the pendant truly belonged to the project, then it wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It was part of something far greater, something potentially catastrophic. Determined to learn more, Richard initiated a discreet background check on Amanda. He accessed public records, social media profiles, and employment histories, piecing together fragments of her life. What he discovered only deepened the mystery. Amanda's grandmother, Margaret, had worked briefly for a military contractor during the Cold War before vanishing from all official records. No death certificate, no obituary, just silence. Richard knew he couldn't approach Amanda directly. Again, not yet. She was clearly unaware of the significance of the necklace, and revealing too much too soon could put her in danger. But he also couldn't ignore the situation. Someone else might recognize the pendant for what it was, and they wouldn't hesitate to act. Over the next few days, Amanda started noticing odd things happening around her. Her phone glitched constantly, freezing mid-call or restarting randomly. Strangers lingered outside her building, pretending to read newspapers or smoke cigarettes. Once, while walking home from work, she spotted the same dark blue sedan parked near the corner twice in 1 week. At first, Amanda dismissed these occurrences as paranoia, stress from work maybe, or just coincidence. But the feeling of being watched grew stronger with each passing day. She began taking different routes home, avoiding familiar streets and keeping her head down. Still, the sensation persisted. One evening, as she left the diner, a man approached her. He looked harmless enough, average height, sandy brown hair, dressed casually in jeans and a leather jacket. He introduced himself as Daniel, claiming to be a journalist writing a feature on local workers. "I'm doing a story on everyday heroes," he said with a friendly smile. "People who keep our communities running smoothly. I heard you've been working at Maggie's for years." Amanda hesitated. Something about his tone felt off, too rehearsed. "I don't think I'm the right person for that," she said cautiously. "Besides, I'm not really comfortable talking to reporters." Daniel shrugged, unfazed. "No pressure. Just thought you might want to share your story. Your grandmother sounds fascinating. Margaret Hayes, right? Did she ever talk about her work?" Amanda stiffened. "How do you know my grandmother's name?" "Oh, I've done my research," Daniel replied smoothly. "She worked for a military contractor back in the day. Pretty impressive stuff." Alarm, bells rang in Amanda's head. She forced a polite smile. "Sorry, I need to get going. Nice meeting you." Before Daniel could respond, she turned and hurried away, clutching her purse tightly. As soon as she rounded the corner, she glanced back. Sure enough, he was following her, maintaining a careful distance. Panic bubbled in her chest, but Amanda forced herself to stay calm. She ducked into a nearby convenience store, pretending to browse the aisles until she saw Daniel pass by outside. Only then did she slip out the back door and make her way home. Once inside her apartment, she locked the door and drew the curtains, her hands trembling slightly. Who was this man? And why was he so interested in her grandmother? More importantly, how did he know about Margaret's work? Amanda grabbed the necklace from her dresser and held it tightly in her fist. Whatever secrets it held, they were worth uncovering. But she couldn't do it alone. Little did she know Richard was already watching and waiting for the right moment to step in. The next morning, Amanda decided it was time to confront the mystery surrounding her grandmother and the necklace. She hadn't slept well the previous night, her mind racing with questions about Daniel, the strange man at the diner, and the unsettling feeling of being followed. Something big was happening, something that went far beyond her understanding, and she knew she couldn't ignore it anymore. Her first step was reaching out to her estranged uncle, Lucas. He was Margaret's younger brother, and the only family member who might have answers. Though they hadn't spoken in years, Amanda remembered him fondly from her childhood. He used to visit often, bringing stories and laughter that brightened even the darkest days after her parents' death. But life had pulled them apart, and their relationship faded into silence. She dialed his number hesitantly, half expecting it to go unanswered. To her relief, he picked up after a few rings. His voice was warm but tinged with surprise. "Amanda, is that you?" "Hi, Uncle Lucas," she said, forcing a smile into her tone. "It's been a long time." "It sure has," he replied. "What's going on? You don't usually call out of the blue." "I need your help," she admitted, skipping the pleasantries. "It's about Grandma. Do you remember her necklace, the one she gave me?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. When Lucas spoke again, his voice was quieter, more cautious. "Yes, I remember it. Why do you ask?" "I think it's important," Amanda said. "More important than we realized. Can we meet? There's so much I don't understand, and I think you might know more than you've told me." Another pause, longer this time. Finally, Lucas sighed. "All right, come over tonight. We'll talk." That evening, Amanda arrived at Lucas's house, a small, tidy place on the outskirts of town. The front yard was overgrown and the paint on the porch railing was peeling, but inside, the house felt welcoming. Photos of family members lined the walls, and the scent of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the air. Lucas greeted her with a hug, his embrace firm and reassuring. "You look just like her, you know," he said softly, nodding toward a framed picture of Margaret on the mantel. "Same eyes, same spirit." They sat down in the living room, the necklace resting between them on the coffee table. Amanda explained everything that had happened: the mysterious man at the diner, the oversized tip, the glitches on her phone, and Daniel's probing questions. As she spoke, Lucas listened carefully, his brow furrowed in thought. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. "I was hoping this day would never come," he murmured. "What do you mean?" Amanda asked, her heart pounding. Lucas hesitated before answering. "Your grandmother. She wasn't just a regular woman working for a military contractor. She was involved in something far bigger, something dangerous." Amanda stared at him, waiting for him to continue. "Tell me everything," she urged. Lucas took a deep breath. Years ago, during the Cold War, the government launched a secret program called Project Starfire. They claimed it was about studying advanced technology, but no one really knew what it was all about. Your grandmother worked for them briefly, handling artifacts recovered from, well, let's just say they weren't from Earth. Amanda's eyes widened. "Aliens?" He nodded grimly. "That's what some people believe. Others say it was all propaganda, a way to justify funding for top-secret research. Either way, the project was shut down suddenly, and most of the artifacts disappeared. Your grandmother quit shortly before it ended. She wouldn't tell me much, but she always warned me that powerful people were looking for her. That's why she moved away, changed her name, and kept a low profile." "But why didn't she ever tell me?" Amanda whispered, clutching the necklace tightly. "She wanted to protect you," Lucas said gently. "Margaret loved you more than anything. She didn't want you dragged into whatever mess she'd left behind." Amanda felt a surge of emotions: anger, sadness, confusion, but above all, determination. "Well, it's too late for that now," she said firmly. "People are watching me, following me. Whoever wants this necklace isn't going to stop until they get it. What should I do?" Lucas stood up and began pacing the room. "We need to figure out exactly what this thing does," he said. "If it's truly part of Project Starfire, then it could be worth a fortune, or it could be deadly. Either way, we can't let it fall into the wrong hands." Just then there was a knock at the door. Both Amanda and Lucas froze, exchanging wary glances. It was late, and neither of them was expecting visitors. "Stay here," Lucas instructed, heading toward the door. He peeked through the peephole, then opened it cautiously. Standing on the porch was Richard, the man from the diner. He looked tired but resolute, holding his hands up to show he meant no harm. "I need to speak with Amanda," he said evenly. Lucas stepped aside reluctantly, allowing Richard to enter. Amanda stood up, her pulse racing. "How did you find me?" she demanded. "I've been keeping an eye on you," Richard admitted. "For your own safety. There are people out there who will stop at nothing to get that necklace. You're not safe. And you are?" Amanda shot back, crossing her arms. "Who exactly are you, and what do you want from me?" Richard sighed, running a hand through his hair. "My name is Richard Carter. I'm a private investigator, but my work often intersects with sensitive matters, like Project Starfire." Lucas stiffened at the mention of the project. "You know about it?" he asked sharply. "Yes," Richard replied, "and I know how dangerous those artifacts can be. If certain factions get hold of them, the consequences could be catastrophic. That's why I'm here, to help you protect yourself and the necklace." Amanda studied him carefully, searching for signs of deception. Despite his imposing presence, there was sincerity in his eyes. Still, trust didn't come easily. "Why should we believe you?" she challenged. "Because I'm not the only one looking for you," Richard said bluntly. "Daniel, the man who approached you, isn't a journalist. He works for a private security firm hired by someone very powerful, someone who wants that necklace badly enough to hurt anyone in their way." A heavy silence fell over the room. Amanda glanced at Lucas, who nodded slowly. "He's telling the truth," Lucas said. "Or at least part of it." Richard turned to Amanda. "I can't promise this will be easy, but if you let me help you, we might stand a chance of figuring out what this thing really is and keeping it out of the wrong hands." After a long moment, Amanda finally nodded. "All right," she said, "but we do this together, no secrets." "Agreed," Richard said. "First, we need to secure the necklace somewhere safe. Then we dig deeper into its origins." As they began making plans, Amanda couldn't shake the feeling that her life had changed forever. The necklace wasn't just a family heirloom. It was a key to unlocking secrets that spanned decades, maybe even worlds. And now, whether she liked it or not, she was caught in the middle of it all, summer too. The next day, Amanda, Lucas, and Richard set out to uncover more about the necklace and its connection to Project Starfire. After hours of planning, they agreed that their best chance of finding answers lay in infiltrating a hidden storage facility, where remnants of the project were rumored to be kept. It wasn't going to be easy. The facility was abandoned but heavily monitored, protected by security systems designed to keep intruders out. Still, they had no other choice. Richard took the lead, using his resources to gather information about the location and layout of the facility. He explained that it had been sealed off decades ago after the project was shut down, but some artifacts might still remain untouched. If they could find records or items linked to Margaret, it could shed light on the true nature of the necklace. Late that night, under the cover of darkness, the trio arrived at the facility, a nondescript warehouse surrounded by chain-link fences topped with barbed wire. The building looked abandoned, its windows boarded up and its walls covered in graffiti. But appearances could be deceiving. "This place gives me the creeps," Lucas muttered as they approached the entrance. "Are you sure this is safe?" "Nothing about this is safe," Richard replied bluntly. "But we don't have time to second-guess ourselves." Amanda nodded silently, clutching the necklace tightly in her pocket. She felt a strange mix of fear and determination coursing through her veins. This wasn't just about solving a mystery anymore. It was about protecting something far greater than herself. Using tools Richard had brought along, they managed to bypass the rusted lock on the side door and slip inside. The interior was eerily quiet, the only sounds coming from their footsteps echoing against the concrete floor. Dust hung thick in the air, making it hard to breathe without coughing. Rows of metal shelves stretched endlessly in every direction, cluttered with forgotten relics of the past. "Over here," Richard whispered, shining a flashlight toward a large metal cabinet in the corner. Its surface was marked with faded labels reading classified and handle with care. With some effort, he pried it open, revealing stacks of files and small containers holding peculiar objects, some glowing faintly, others emitting low hums. Amanda stepped closer, her heart racing as she examined the contents. One container held a fragment of what looked like a crystalline material, pulsing with an inner light. Another contained a metallic disc etched with symbols unlike anything she'd ever seen. But it was the third item that caught her attention. A pendant nearly identical to hers, resting on a bed of velvet. Its design was slightly different, but the resemblance was undeniable. "That's it," Amanda breathed, pulling her own necklace out to compare. "This has to be connected." Lucas frowned, leaning over her shoulder. "What does it mean? Why would Grandma have something like this?" Before anyone could answer, Richard spotted a stack of documents nearby. He flipped through them quickly, his brow furrowing deeper with each page. "These are research notes from the project," he said. "They talk about the artifacts being part of a larger device, something capable of communicating across vast distances." "Communicating with who?" Amanda asked, her voice trembling. Richard hesitated before answering. "Beings not from Earth." A stunned silence fell over the group. Amanda felt dizzy, as though the ground beneath her feet had shifted. All her life she'd thought the necklace was just a family heirloom, a symbol of love and memory. Now she was learning it might be part of something unimaginably bigger. Lucas broke the silence, his tone urgent. "We need to get out of here if whoever's looking for us finds out we've been snooping around." He didn't finish his sentence, but everyone understood. They quickly gathered what they could carry, files, photographs, and the matching pendant, and prepared to leave. As they retraced their steps back toward the exit, Amanda couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. Her suspicions were confirmed when they heard voices echoing through the cavernous space. Someone else was in the facility. "Hide!" Richard hissed, pushing them toward a narrow alcove between two shelves. They ducked down, holding their breath as flashlights swept past their hiding spot, peering cautiously around the edge of the shelf. Amanda saw 3 men dressed in black tactical gear moving methodically through the aisles. Their leader carried a tablet, scanning the area as if searching for something specific, or someone. "They're looking for us," Amanda whispered, her voice barely audible. "No kidding," Lucas muttered under his breath. "Now what?" Richard glanced around, weighing their options. "We can't go back the way we came. They'll see us. There's another exit on the far side of the building. We'll have to make a run for it." It was risky, but staying put wasn't an option either. On Richard's signal, they bolted from their hiding spot, weaving through the maze of shelves as quietly as possible. The sound of their footsteps echoed loudly, drawing shouts from behind them. "They're on to us," Lucas yelled, panic creeping into his voice. "Keep moving," Richard urged, leading the way toward the opposite end of the facility. Amanda clutched the files tightly to her chest, adrenaline fueling her movements despite the burning in her legs. Just as they reached the secondary exit, one of the pursuers fired a warning shot, the bullet ricocheting off the metal doorframe inches from Amanda's head. She gasped, stumbling forward, but Richard grabbed her arm and yanked her outside into the cool night air. They sprinted across the parking lot, diving into Richard's car parked nearby. Tires screeched as he floored the accelerator, leaving the warehouse and their pursuers behind. For several minutes no one spoke, each of them catching their breath and processing what had just happened. Finally, Amanda broke the silence. "So, aliens?" she said weakly, half joking but completely serious. Richard nodded grimly. "Looks that way." "And my grandmother was involved in all of this?" Amanda asked, still struggling to wrap her mind around it. "Yes," Lucas said softly. "She gave up everything to protect you, and now it's your turn to protect her legacy." Amanda stared at the necklace in her hand, its starburst design shimmering faintly in the moonlight. Whatever secrets it held, she knew one thing for certain. She couldn't let it fall into the wrong hands, not now, not ever. The days that followed were a blur of planning, paranoia, and discovery. After narrowly escaping the storage facility, Amanda, Lucas, and Richard knew they couldn't stay idle for long. Whoever was after the necklace, and the secrets it held, wouldn't stop until they found them. It became clear that they weren't just dealing with one group. There were multiple factions vying for control of Project Starfire's remnants. Richard explained that these groups fell into two main camps. One faction, which he loosely aligned himself with, sought to protect humanity from the unknown dangers posed by the alien artifacts. They believed the technology was too powerful and unpredictable to be used safely. The other faction, however, saw the artifacts as tools for domination, weapons or communication devices capable of giving them unimaginable power over others. They'll tear each other apart to get what they want, Richard warned during one of their late-night strategy sessions at a safe house. And anyone who gets in their way will end up collateral damage. Amanda listened intently, clutching the necklace in her lap. She felt like she was living in a nightmare, yet every detail seemed surreal. Her grandmother had always been a quiet, loving woman who baked cookies and told bedtime stories. How could Margaret have been involved in something so vast, so dangerous? Lucas leaned forward, his voice low but firm. We need allies. People we can trust. If we try to take this on alone, we're dead. I agree, Richard said, but finding trustworthy people won't be easy. Everyone has an agenda. Despite the risks, they decided to reach out cautiously to select individuals Richard knew from his work. People who had connections to Project Starfire but shared his cautious approach. These contacts provided critical information about the opposing faction, a shadowy organization known only as Nexus, rumored to have ties to wealthy elites and rogue military operatives. Nexus wasn't interested in protecting humanity. They wanted to exploit the alien tech for their own gain. As tensions escalated, Amanda began noticing changes in the necklace itself. At first, it was subtle, a faint warmth against her skin when she touched it, or an occasional shimmer that caught her eye even in low light. But soon, more startling phenomena occurred. Once, while examining the matching pendant they'd retrieved from the storage facility, both artifacts began emitting a soft hum, their surfaces glowing faintly before falling silent again. What's happening? Amanda asked, staring wide-eyed at the pendants. Richard shook his head, equally baffled. I don't know. But it suggests the necklace might not just be decorative, it could be functional, maybe part of a larger system. This revelation added urgency to their mission. If the necklace truly was part of a communication device, or, worse, a weapon, it needed to be secured immediately. However, destroying it outright wasn't an option. Not only would that mean losing any chance of understanding its purpose, but Amanda couldn't bring herself to destroy something her grandmother had risked everything to protect. Their next move came unexpectedly. One of Richard's contacts tipped them off about an upcoming meeting between Nexus leaders and former members of Project Starfire. The gathering was set to take place in an abandoned underground bunker outside the city, a neutral zone where secrets were traded and deals struck. This is our chance to gather intel, Richard said, spreading a map across the table. If we can infiltrate the meeting, we might learn enough to turn the tide in our favor. It's too risky, Lucas argued, rubbing his temples. They'll recognize us the second we step foot inside. Not if we go in disguise, Richard countered. We blend in, listen, and leave without being noticed. Amanda hesitated, torn between fear and resolve. What happens if we get caught? We won't, Richard assured her, though his tone lacked conviction. We stick together and follow the plan. Against all odds, they agreed to proceed. Richard arranged fake credentials and disguises, transforming them into convincing participants of the clandestine world they were about to enter. Amanda wore a sleek black jacket and dark glasses, her hair tucked under a cap to obscure her features. Lucas donned a janitorial uniform, allowing him to move freely through restricted areas unnoticed. Richard, meanwhile, played the role of a corporate negotiator, complete with tailored suit and forged documents. On the night of the meeting, they arrived at the bunker separately, slipping past guards stationed at the entrance. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. Men and women in expensive suits mingled with soldiers in tactical gear, their conversations hushed but intense. Alien artifacts sat on display tables, their eerie glow illuminating the dim space. Amanda stayed close to Richard, pretending to examine the items while eavesdropping on nearby discussions. She overheard snippets about activation protocols and signal frequencies, terms that meant little to her, but hinted at the necklace's potential uses. Meanwhile, Lucas worked behind the scenes, planting listening devices in key locations. Just as they were about to leave, chaos erupted. Someone spotted Lucas tampering with a security console and raised the alarm. Shouts filled the air as armed guards rushed toward them. Thinking quickly, Richard grabbed Amanda's hand and pulled her toward an emergency exit, shouting instructions to Lucas to meet them outside. They burst into the cold night air, hearts pounding, only to find Lucas already waiting beside their getaway vehicle. Without a word, they piled in and sped away, narrowly avoiding pursuit. Back at the safe house, they reviewed the recordings Lucas had captured. Among the jargon and code words, one phrase stood out: Starburst Protocol. It referred to a sequence designed to activate the communication device using the Starburst pendants. "It's not just a piece of jewelry," Amanda murmured, holding the necklace up to the light. "It's a key." Richard nodded grimly. "And now we know what it unlocks. The question is, what do we do with it?" The answer wouldn't come easily. For now, they could only regroup, fortify their defenses, and prepare for whatever came next. Whatever choice Amanda made would determine not only her fate but possibly the fate of humanity itself. The final decision weighed heavily on Amanda's shoulders. After uncovering the truth about the necklace, that it was part of an alien communication device capable of contacting beings far beyond Earth, she faced an impossible choice. Should she destroy the artifact to ensure it never fell into dangerous hands? Or should she risk activating it, potentially opening humanity to unimaginable possibilities and dangers? Destroying the necklace felt like betraying her grandmother's legacy. Margaret had gone to great lengths to protect it, even sacrificing her own freedom and safety. But using it carried risks Amanda couldn't fully comprehend. What if the signal attracted hostile entities? What if Nexus intercepted the transmission and turned it against humanity? For days, Amanda wrestled with these questions, barely sleeping or eating. Richard and Lucas did their best to support her, offering advice but ultimately leaving the decision in her hands. They understood that this wasn't just about technology or secrets, it was personal. It was about honoring Margaret's memory, while protecting the future. One evening, as they sat together in the safe house, Amanda finally spoke. "I've made up my mind," she said softly, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. "We can't keep the necklace here, it's too dangerous. But we also can't destroy it, not without knowing what it's meant to do." Richard frowned. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm sending it away," Amanda replied. "Somewhere. No one can reach it, but where it can still fulfill its purpose." Lucas leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "You mean space?" Amanda nodded. "Yes. If we send the necklace aboard an unmanned probe, it'll be out of reach of Nexus and anyone else who wants to misuse it. At the same time, it might still have a chance to connect with whoever created it." Richard hesitated, considering the plan. "It's risky. We'd need access to advanced equipment, not to mention clearance to launch something into orbit." "I know someone who can help," Richard admitted after a pause. "An old colleague of mine works at a private aerospace company. He owes me a favor. I think he'd be willing to assist if we explain the stakes." With renewed determination, they set their plan into motion. Richard reached out to his contact, crafting a carefully worded message that hinted at the urgency of the situation without revealing too much. To their relief, the colleague agreed to meet discreetly and hear them out. Over the next few days, they worked tirelessly to prepare the probe. Amanda handled the necklace with care, ensuring it was securely mounted within the spacecraft's payload bay. Lucas helped gather supplies and double-check every detail, while Richard coordinated logistics with his contact. The process was exhausting, but filled with a sense of purpose none of them had felt before. On the morning of the launch, they traveled to a remote facility nestled in the countryside. The landscape was peaceful, with rolling fields stretching toward the horizon and birds chirping in the distance. Yet the air buzzed with tension as they approached the launch pad. As the countdown began, Amanda stood alone near the probe, staring at the necklace one last time. Her heart ached with the weight of letting go, not just of the artifact, but of the connection it represented to her grandmother. Still, she knew it was the right thing to do. "Are you ready?" Richard asked, gently, coming to stand beside her. Amanda took a deep breath and nodded. "Yeah, let's do this." She stepped back as the engines roared to life, shaking the ground beneath their feet. Flames erupted from the base of the rocket, illuminating the sky as it ascended higher and higher. Within moments, the probe disappeared into the clouds, carrying the necklace and its secrets into the vast expanse of space. Tears streamed down Amanda's face as she watched it vanish. For so long, the necklace had been a burden, a mystery she couldn't solve. Now it was free, floating among the stars, waiting to fulfill its destiny. Back at the safe house later that evening, Amanda sat quietly by the window, gazing at the night sky. Richard and Lucas joined her, sharing a rare moment of silence. None of them needed to speak. They all understood the significance of what had happened. "You did the right thing," Richard said finally, breaking the quiet. Not everyone would have had the courage to make that choice. Amanda smiled faintly. "I didn't do it alone. We all played a part." Lucas nodded. "And now it's over. Whatever happens next is out of our hands." But Amanda knew better. While the immediate danger had passed, the experience had changed her forever. She'd faced fear, betrayal, and uncertainty, and come out stronger on the other side. More importantly, she'd honored her grandmother's memory in a way that mattered. In the weeks that followed, life slowly returned to normal, or as close to normal as it could be after such extraordinary events. Amanda went back to work at the diner, though she noticed fewer strangers lingering outside her apartment. Richard continued his investigations, keeping tabs on Nexus to ensure they didn't pose further threats. And Lucas, inspired by everything they'd uncovered, began documenting Margaret's story, hoping to preserve her legacy for future generations. Meanwhile, millions of miles away, the probe drifted silently through the cosmos. Its systems hummed faintly as it scanned the void, searching for signs of intelligent life. One day, perhaps, the necklace would emit its signal again, bridging the gap between worlds and fulfilling its purpose. Until then, Amanda found solace in knowing she'd done everything she could. As she looked up at the stars each night, she felt a strange sense of peace, a reminder that some mysteries were meant to remain unsolved, their answers written in the language of the universe itself.